morning and welcome to Niaga AWANI. You're with me, Nina Rosman, and today we're going to celebrate another day, 27 June of International MSMEs Day. Definitely everyone, each of us has a very important role to play to raise public awareness about their contribution in sustainable development and how they play a very critical role in the economic growth, especially in the global. So definitely we want to reflect back. It's the anniversary of the MSMEs today. So we want to reflect back on the initiative of Belanjawan 2023 that was presented by the government, few initiatives in order to support the local SMEs with few initiatives that was presented in Belanjawan 2023. And all the initiative that was presented is to empower local SMEs, definitely. So definitely, I will not waste any more time. I will welcome you, our guest, Datuk David Gurupatham, the Industries Unite co-founder, is here with us in the studio. I want to say, Datuk, thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Definitely. So today is definitely a day to celebrate, another year to celebrate, yes. And all of us, including not the SMEs, have to be a part to celebrate their contribution till today. So maybe we can start off Belanjawan 2023. The question here today, we want to see, have all the SMEs has seized the opportunities, the growth, and even the recovery during the 6 months? So we have 6 months to go to end year of 2023. Maybe you can share with us how Belanjawan 2023 has alleviated further from the impact of businesses, especially micro, small, medium enterprise, MSMEs, from the pandemic itself.
Okay, so first I'd like to talk about the impact of MSMEs, right? Micro and medium, small, medium entrepreneurs, basically, right? That's what it means. Now, the impact of this group to the economy is really 90% of businesses in Malaysia and at least 70% of the labour force. So it's a very important segment of the economy, and I think the government has done a very good job in highlighting portions of this group that perhaps before were not really looked into. Mm-hmm. So if you look at this budget, you know, it seems to be ground up as opposed to top down. Mm-hmm. Whereas maybe before the budgets were top down, expecting the bigger SMEs to create jobs and trickle down economics, as they call it. Hasn't really been very helpful, but I think this is the first time I'm seeing more of a bottom-up approach, right? And you're looking at also at categories of people that they have focused on, as opposed to very general provisions. So you're looking at, for example, women, you're looking at young people, you're looking at marginalized communities, and not just marginalized communities in West Malaysia, but also in Sabah and Sarawak. Mm-hmm. So I think they've paid a lot of attention to a very broad and large group of people, which are the micro SMEs and the smaller sort of SMEs. Mm. So I think that's good, yes.
So as you mentioned, start from the bottom out. So this is, we call it the first one, Madani Belanjawan. So in what ways the Madani Belanjawan specifically enhance the competitiveness for the local SMEs?
I think, firstly, okay, before I go into the benefits, I think what happens naturally from a ground-up approach here is I think it creates more liquidity in the market, mm-hmm. right? So when you're assisting or you're helping the SMEs have more money in their pocket, what happens is, or the micro SMEs, which are a larger number compared to the bigger SMEs and so on and so forth, what happens is there's more liquidity in a larger pool of people in Malaysia, and I think that's very important, right? Mm-hmm, yes. But then if we look at whether or not the key question really is, are these programs, I mean, on paper, as a theory, it works, whether it's really going to translate down to the ground, okay? Because, you know, if you look at some of the programs that they have, you know, you have, for example, credit guarantees, you have loans, you know, from BSN, SME Bank, and so on and so forth. But if you look at what happened during the pandemic, you found that a lot of these people, firstly, didn't know where to go, mm-hmm. right? I mean, if you're let's say a mobilepreneur, like one of the categories yes. in the budget, right? And you do Grab and you do deliveries and so on and so forth. Now, do you know where to go to get? Do you know firstly that you have this allocation? That's number one. Number two is, do you know where to go?
What's
Which
the
agency?
next first step?
Yeah, which agency to go to? And number three is, have you done all your paperwork? You know, have you paid your taxes? Have you got your documents? Have you got a statement of account and things like that?
Definitely, we want to
that
ask where
banks,
to start.
you know, so I think you're going to find that these are problems that need to be resolved before you can see the impact of what the government is really trying to do. Okay.
So maybe I want to touch one of the, say, the main initiative provided for the MSMEs, where the government's in the Belanjawan 2023 has agreed to lower the MSMEs rate on taxable income for the first 150,000 ringgit from 17 to 15%, which is 2% minimized. This reduction is expected to save between 3,000 to 150,000 ringgit SME taxpayer. So maybe you can share with us what additional facilities or even support could be introduced to complement tax reductions and financial options for the SMEs.
Okay, I think firstly, you know, you have to say, I know during COVID I've been very critical of the way SMEs have been treated, but I think when things are, you know, the government does things, we have to also appreciate, you know, and say that, yes, it was very welcome. It is very welcome, especially for the lower tiers of, you know, the SME market. And also we must note that this is, you know, in the last proposed budget by Tengku Zafrul, you know, before, it was actually not 15%, it was 10%. So that's 10%. So you actually had from 2,000 to 3,000 ringgit, right? Effectively, right? And that affects at least 150 to 200,000 businesses. That's a lot.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I know it doesn't look like it's very big, but, you know, when you are a micro, you know, SME or whatever, that 3,000 actually helps to defray certain costs, right? So what are these costs that are basically impacting the lower end of the market? Actually, all across SME market is actually three things, right? Number one is the cost of doing business, right? Number two is labor costs, right? And number three is really, you know, inflation, right? Everything has gone up, okay? Whether you like it or not, that's the reality of it. So you know, in many ways, this amount helps to defray those costs. It doesn't mean that it's going to really do, but it is a big help, especially for the micro SMEs, right? But personally, I think it should have been done on a more wider scale. And what I mean by that is perhaps, so it works up to a threshold of maybe 600K. Okay. Right, so you have 150K, then it's 150 to 600, and then 600 you pay 24%, right? Above that, I believe it's 17%. I'm not too sure. But I think what could have been done is not really just in terms of increasing this small threshold, smaller group, which is the 15% where we are now. We could have pushed the threshold from 600,000 to maybe 1 million and increased it gradually. So instead of above 600,000, 24%, maybe we could have made that threshold to 1 million and have a medium sort of target of maybe 17%. I think that would have perhaps translated to something more effective. But even then, I think this is already
there may
good.
be a reason why we didn't reach to that level, maybe economic circumstances?
If you look at the numbers, 3,000 times 150,000 businesses, you know, the overall scheme of things is not a lot of money that is being saved by the government or being given in a way in terms of tax, right? But, you know, as I said, we're thankful, right? But perhaps it could have been done better. But I think the key point that we have to also understand is that before we start celebrating, is that you have to have made a profit before you get the tax reduction, correct? Now, a lot of people, or a lot of micro businesses especially, as resilient as they are, you know, I think Malaysia is a fantastic country and it's a good example, even for third world countries, when you look at where we are today with all your penjajas, you know, people are out there, they're resilient, but it doesn't mean that they're doing well, okay? And so not many people may be making a profit, right? Don't forget, we just came out of pandemic, right? There's no more moratorium. There's no more
PKP,
COVID Act
yes.
protection.
Yes.
So a lot of these businesses are having to deal with old debts. Kena bayar balik hutang untuk rental lah, hutang untuk whatever kan, suppliers semua kan.
Betul, banyak.
Banyak dia.
Fikir,
So you have to pay back these loans, right?
Correct.
And outgoings, correct? And then at the same time, you have to manage your cash flow to do your business, to make a profit. And in the meantime, before you can think about that, you have issues such as electricity, higher labor cost, higher inflation. So these are things that people are grappling with. So, whether they're actually going to benefit by making a profit and then having that tax reduced or that extra money. It's assumed, 3,000 ringgit is going to be made available for 150,000 or so micro SMEs. Again, you have to look at how effective that part is based on the fact of whether or not they're making a profit.
So we already passed half a year already for 2023, almost we end of June. And then maybe possibly for those MSMEs, for those who have not taken the opportunities that was presented in Belanjawan 2023, maybe you can share with us what are the steps for them to take to ensure they meet the qualifying criteria to get the support.
So again, this is the issue if you're going more on the micro SMEs and all of this, right? So if you look at one of the problems, of course, was documentation, okay? So I remember back during the COVID period, we were talking about a whole group of people that were left out of the bantuan. There was the policies and facilities that are being given by the government because, number one, they weren't registered as a tax user. They didn't pay income tax. They didn't have a SOXO. They didn't, they were off-grid, if you want to call it. So even whether you have tekun or you have whatever, you can't track these people because they may be, from the gig industry, they may be daily paid workers and things like that. And so they're not tracked in the system. Okay. So I think the first thing we need to do is educate these people. So even if you had a town hall, for example, in the kampong hall or whatever, and you got someone from SME Bank or BSN or someone to come and give a lecture or give a talk and say, listen, you need to get your books in order, you need to register for tax. Don't worry if you're not, you don't qualify, you don't pay the tax or you pay a very minimal amount, but you need all of this to be able to then access these things that the government wants to help you with. I think this sort of thing needs to go down. It's not just from on top we make these announcements.
Correct.
But I think we need to go down, and we already have training programs and all that under different.
Just
and I
need to boost it up.
We need to boost it up, and we need to go down. As they say, turun padang lah. We need, if you want to talk about micro SMEs and you want to talk about this segment of the market, then you need to come down to educate them. You need to give them the support. You need to make sure that it is a one-stop shop. So let's say you want to help the Usahawan Bumi Putra, for example, right? Put a stand in every masjid, for example. In the rural areas, in other areas, for example. Give out this information. Give them the help. Put some care lines, for example, right? So these are perhaps things that we could do a little bit more.
Maybe we could share, my last question is about the collaboration of different stakeholders such as the government agencies, we can say the financial institution and the SME itself. So how can this collaboration enhance further the effectiveness of all of these initiatives?
I think that's a very good question, actually. You see, at the end of the day, what we've seen over the last several years and several budgets is the idea that all the government agencies, the banks, and to a certain extent private lending as well through corporacies or through banks and credit guarantees and so on and so forth, right? So you see what the government is trying to do is really get everybody together to see how we can help to boost the economy and help the SMEs. But one thing that we need to remember is, we've had all these so-called digitalization policies. Malaysia is going to be fully digitalized and all of that. But on the ground, we're not.
The reality
is we're not, right?
Are we still far from reaching it?
And we, if it's so easy for someone to use, I'm not going to mention name, but, something to buy goods using a phone, to buy goods from a tab from a 7-Eleven or upper, why are we so far away from doing the same thing at a pasar malam?
Understand?
You get what I mean? So I think people like SME Corp, which I know they're very good people in SME Corp, they're very good people in SME Bank, and I know 2 years ago we were talking about SME Corp actually building these type of infrastructures or these type of systems that could be integrated, for the penjajas, for the micro businesses, And I think maybe what we need to do is have that overall infrastructure, the payment structures, digitalized payment structures, whereby we are able to then say, I'm going to place my phone and buy something from the Pasar Malam using this digital process. Now, why is this good? This is good because you find that the government gives people, right? It helps people sometimes, right? So through when you have civil servants get a certain bonus, or the poor, the B40 gets certain assistance. Now all of that can be translated into a digital system, into a card, and where this money is spent at the local pasar malams or the local mom and pop shops buying Malaysian goods, because that's what you can do. That money may not be good if you want to buy something from overseas, but it'll be good if you want to buy a tin of sardine or a bag of rice made in Malaysia.
Correct.
So I think we should be also paying attention to, when we say digitalizing, really giving them the support. You can't just say, okay, here's 3,000 ringgit, go figure out how you're going to get this digitalization in.
All right, I want to say thank you very much to Datuk David Gurupatham, the Industries Unite co-founder. Definitely, this is a very good insight. We have 6 months to go. We have, with your insight, all the SMEs out there will grab all the opportunities, growth, and even enhance their recovery. And everything will be uploaded in astrawani.com and all social media platforms.